What is going on, legendary humans? Ryan Magic here, and in this video I'm going to be sharing some behind the scenes know-how on what it's like to be a multi-million dollar entrepreneur. And I'm here to tell you that it's not all what you expect. Some of these points are going to have you really thinking. Now, if you don't follow this channel, make sure you click the subscribe button so you can stay in touch with the new videos that I bring out. But let's get into this. The reason that it's valuable to understand this is so you pursue the journey with more groundedness. Also, a lot of these are lessons that are only gained after you've run a multi-million dollar business. So if you can understand them in advance, you can watch out for them as you build your multi-million dollar business, which you're gonna do, rock it out. But I didn't expect these to come up when I built a multi-million dollar business. There's a certain way that entrepreneurship is idolized. I don't know if it's always sold this way, because I think most really successful entrepreneurs aren't advertising online about entrepreneurship because most of them aren't coaches. I was a multi-million dollar entrepreneur advertising coaching because I'm a coach. And most of the multi-million dollar entrepreneurs that I know, they barely even go on social media. And I have so many friends, and all of these things, like if I take these 11 points and just give them to any of my multi-million dollar entrepreneur friends, they're just like, tell me about it. Like these are real, true things. Some of them are more obvious. Some of them are really interesting things to think about. So let's get into it. The first one, money problems. What money problems? On a personal front, money no longer becomes a consideration. I'll give you an example. One of my friends has a multi-8-figure net worth outside the business. So in terms of like assets and stuff, worth a lot of money. Let's say more than 10, 20, 30 million dollars. So if he takes his family on a holiday, he spends 150 grand taking a bunch of kids to the US. It's not a big deal. He doesn't think about it, right? When I ran my multi-million dollar business for the first time, didn't care about money. Like if I missed a flight, like I remember once myself and an old videographer of mine were going and doing a keynote. I was doing a keynote in Makassar in Indonesia, and they were paying for my flights, they were paying me to speak. I get to the airport, I forgot my passport, had to go back, cost me $4,500 to rebook flights out of my pocket, which is more than I was getting paid for this particular keynote. I was doing it for footage. Didn't give a shit. Just didn't care. I just fundamentally don't give as much of a crap about money. It just does not matter. Hey, how much does that cost? Yeah, 5 grand, whatever. Yeah, that's a cool thing. That's a cool thing. I know this is the only point that most people think is going to happen, and it does happen. It's like, yeah, who cares? It's going to cost 5 grand to fix it. Fucking who cares? You don't think about it because the numbers you're doing are so big. So when I was doing like close to $400,000 a month in business, my cost base is like $250,000 to over $300,000 a month. I'm spending $300,000 a month in my business. So I'm not thinking, oh, that costs $300. I'm going to worry about it. It's like I'm spent $300,000 this month. Who gives a shit about $300? You don't think about it, which is cool. That's one thing. There's a lot that you don't think about. Let's get into the juice. 2, this is what you don't think about. Same shit, different smell. As you progress through life, you don't ascend to some Super Saiyan life form mode where it's just like, holy crap, now that I've made it, my life is different. It's exactly the same. You go back to your family, you're sitting around the table, you're treated the same, life's the same. You deal with ups and downs. You're motivated sometimes, you're not motivated other times. You have bad days, you have good days. You get excited about catching up with a friend, same deal. Things are exactly the same. You just are a multi-million dollar entrepreneur. There are some things that are different, but it's same shit, different smell. You're not going to get there and just it's going to be different. And why that's important to know is because the things that you're thinking will be solved with the success won't be. You're thinking like, I'm not treated the way I want to be treated by my family. If I just make it, then they'll see. They won't see. You're still going to have the same problem at the end. It's like, oh, just get this big win. It's going to change the way that then I'm going to find an amazing partner. You're still going to have to learn to socialize and love yourself unconditionally and know your worth. I remember a multi-million-dollar entrepreneur, still felt small going into a room, like insignificant, like I didn't have grounded confidence, which I've learned to build I've built over the last few years. I really think that I'm an amazing person. I know my worth. And that came off the back end of shedding a lot of my material possessions so that I didn't have anything where I was placing my worth on it. But really, it's going to be the same game. You're going to deal with the same problems. Fulfillment is still going to be just as much of a challenge then as it is with no success. And when I talk to all of the entrepreneurs that I'm friends with that are wildly successful, whether they're doing $150 million a year, or friends that do $50 million a year, when they reflect, and I've mentioned this in a few videos, when they reflect back on the best times on the journey, it's the connections that they have, the people that they were working alongside. It was the challenge that they overcame and how that made them feel. And the challenge, like, oh, let's get into this and solve this problem. That was exciting. That was fulfilling. The money and whatever. Yeah, you don't worry about personal issues, but we've heard the stats. We know that once you make over 120K a year or 80K a year, whatever it is, your happiness doesn't continue to proportionally increase. It does up until that point because that enables enough choices to have most of what you could consider to have a really good, healthy life. Over and above that, you can buy a more expensive car. And this takes me to the third point. The level of luxe changes, but you do the same things. If you're into camping, you can go camping on a budget of nothing. You can literally go camping and spend like $20 for 5 days. Use your shitty old family's tents, take some baked beans. You can be in nature in the same spot as someone that's got some $80,000 customized van that they park in the same campsite. Or they could be in the forest at some luxury eco lodge that's just cost 15 grand for 3 days, $5,000 a night. You're in the same nature, you're doing the same things, the level of luxe changes. But you could have somebody that's in the luxe, kind of stressed in their head, not being present, not taking in the beauty of their surroundings. And then you could have some broke hippie that's like really present and enjoying nature. And wow, look how fresh this water feels in the stream. And hey, we should jump off here. And oh, you want to climb that tree? There's presence. They're really getting the fullness of the experience. I think that's really, I've spoken about this as discussing it with the ability to do both. I can do it the cheap way, the expensive way. Nothing changes, just the level of luxe. You're into tennis? Cool. Wait, you can still play tennis with like borrowing your mate's racket, or you can buy a $400 brand new racket. Cool. You could be into racing and you could watch it. You could go right into the pits, spend four grand on a ticket. I went to the F1 $1,000 ticket to go into some fancy lounge, or I could get a $50 ticket, or I could, ask my friend to buy me a ticket for my birthday. You're still going and experiencing the same thing. One's just more luxe, right? It's interesting. Just think about that. 4, Titanic versus the jet ski. Cost base is higher. So what I mean by this is when you're a small, nimble business owner, you're not a multi-million-dollar entrepreneur. Like I mentioned, my cost base at times has been $350,000. That's how much my expenses are for the month. All the staffing costs, $50,000 to $80,000 a month in marketing spend. You've got a big lease, so your monthly rent, $30,000 a month for rent. I mean, when you're nimble, you can just at the moment, I'm just moving around. I don't have an office space. I don't have a massive team. I'm nimble in the way that I'm doing things. But when I run a massive company, it wasn't a massive company, but compared to a startup business owner, it was 25 full-time staff, big cost base, whatever. You're less nimble. You're less nimble. And the reason why is because when you stuff up, you can't, when it's going down, people talk about cash flow is king. The reason why is because, let's say at the moment, there's nothing that I can't sell there's no problem that I can't sell myself out of. I can make a bunch of sales in any business really, get a bunch of cash flow quickly, make 50 grand in a month, and that can cover pretty much anything. When your cost base is $300,000, you can't just sell yourself out of a problem. You could have like at one point, I'll give you an example. I had a team that was doing $500 to $1 million a month in sales, okay? High performing sales team. Over a period of 3 months, they quit. So my expenses were still 300,000. My revenue's just gone to nothing. Yeah, I can sell, but to rebuild that team, I took a hit for a few months. That is the Titanic, the ship. You can't just, like when you're on a jet ski, when you're like a startup, small entrepreneur, you can just move your way around, maneuver, do whatever the hell you want. When you're a big business, it's a more long-term game. You can't afford to make mistakes in the same way. They're very costly, and you can destroy your whole business with a couple of key errors because your cost base is higher, okay? Interesting. It's just an interesting thing to think about. I didn't think about it at the start. I assumed the way I played in the early days, so easy and bulletproof. You're not bulletproof because and they always say you should have minimum 3 months of money in the bank, in your business bank account, covering 3 months of cost base. So when I had 3 months, $300,000 a month of expensive, have between 900,000 and 1.8 million, 1.8 million in the bank. So between 3 and 6 months of your cost base in the bank for this reason, okay? 5, you've got a lot more responsibility, a lot more. People's entire lives are counting on you. You got customers and they're making decisions. Your decisions you make affect your customers' lives. The decisions that you make massively, to a greater degree than your customers, affect your staff's lives, your team members. You know, you choose to make a decision and you've got to cut 3 team members. They might not have money for food the next week. Most people live paycheck to paycheck. There's a lot greater responsibility. The way that you lead determines the level of fulfillment that someone experiences in their life. Like we did cool things like gratitude circles. If you're a multi-million-dollar entrepreneur, like on a Friday night, we'd celebrate wins in the team and we do a lot of personal development together. But if it was a crap workplace for people, and in every workplace, you're gonna get squabbles and stuff like that. One person's bickering about someone else sometimes, and quite often I had to pull people into the conference room, conflict resolution, mitigate conflict and problems. Someone's being bullied because someone's feeling insecure or whatever it is. That person's whole life sucks at work until that's solved. And you've created the environment. It's your responsibility to solve. So there is a ton more responsibility with staff and clients. You just wouldn't think about it because at the moment, it's like if you're trying to break through and become a multi-million-dollar entrepreneur, it's very self-focused. And most entrepreneurs, like I'm pretty self-focused. I love making a difference because it makes me feel good. I'm still pretty self-focused. Like I'm not just completely benevolent where everything I do is for the good of others. I'm really thinking about how can I feel good? How can I be healthy for me? And I guess that does then lead over to other people, but as entrepreneurs, we're pretty self-focused. There's a huge responsibility. Your decisions change the well-being of a lot of different stakeholders, okay? And if you have investors, that's another big thing. Someone could invest money in the business. The way that the business performs determines their quality of life and their life in a big way. More responsibility. Number 6, less time because you have competing attention. All of a sudden, when you have a multi-million-dollar business, for most multi-million-dollar businesses that aren't just like mega lean ones without staff, most multi-million-dollar businesses have staff. You've got people wanting to talk to you left, right, and center. You've got constantly, can I talk to you? Can I grab you for 5? Can I grab you for 2? Can I grab you for... So it's like constantly people are bombarding you. And it's almost like if you don't have good boundaries with your time, it's like, I just gotta, like, this has to be done today. And you're just in this swamp of time, just being time pressure. Then you've got competing attention with your family. You haven't called me for this amount of time. Your friends, when's the last time we caught up? Your partner, you're home late again. And it's just like, it's something that you really, really have to learn to manage. And great entrepreneurs, you're never gonna have it down pat 100%, but you have less time. You think, I'd have more time. But when there's more responsibility, There's more self-inflicted pressure because you realize the extent of which your actions impact other people. And so navigating that is a tricky one. We'll talk about why as we go on, but that's a big one. Number 7, as you start to build more wealth, and again, I said that if I show any of my multi-million dollar entrepreneurs this, because I've had discussions about most of these things with tons of my multi-million dollar entrepreneur friends, they just go, yes, 100%. And I know this one's based off big time. It happened with a friend of mine. He really spoke about this. People identify you based on your success. The more you become wealthy, people are like, it's the wealthy guy. And when you start to, that's good and that's bad. It's good in the sense that you're like, yeah, cool, I'm successful. That feels good. I'm doing well. People are like, good on you, you're doing well. But because you start to get identified as the person that's successful, there's a couple of things around this. You then there's the temptation, and it happens without you realize, it happened to me without me realizing it, and I've shed this layer with a lot of hard work and psychological work. But you start to go, people like me because of this. Wow, because I've met these conditions in my life, I'm conditionally loved with this success. And that creates a liability. Because then as the success changes, because you've associated, people like me because of the success. If the success and the money changes, then your self-worth and sense of self can also fluctuate. And that's a liability. And so some people navigate this better than others. I struggled with it because I was like, wow, finally people are liking me. I struggled to be liked in my life because I wasn't a very popular person. I was very shy and anxious growing up. And I was like, wow, now people like me. And then when things went up and down, I was like more reactive and my sense of self-worth was conditional. I didn't love myself unconditionally. I now had new parameters that I measured myself off, and I'm like, wow, if they like me this much, it's not a conscious thing, it's a subconscious thing. It's like an internal thing that you're not even aware of. I'm gonna go bigger because then they'll like me even more, and it becomes this weird mindset thing. There's studies done around this. It's a real thing that happens. And then you start to go, okay, cool. Well, I don't want to decrease it. So you start to make decisions based on, well, I want to keep this because this is the way that people like me. This is my identity. This is the way that I feel good. Interesting one, that one. And the other thing is then, this is what I found. I shut that business down at a point where it was no longer relevant. It was no longer my passion. Then when I've gone to start other businesses and things, I found that there's this niggling voice in my head that's like, almost not willing to go through the crap because I've placed an expectation on myself of, well, I need to at least do what I did last time if I'm doing something. And it has messed with my decision making at times. It's not just, I can do whatever, there's nothing to lose. I've never had anything anyway, so I can start this, fail that, start this, fail that. It's like if I start and fail, then people might be like, it's the successful dude that's just failed at something. And then my self-worth's going to be taken away. Just be aware of it is the bottom line. So people identify you based on your success. You develop the worth based on that. Lonely despite being surrounded. This is something that I know every entrepreneur that has built a big amount of success feels. You have people around you left, right, and center. You've got staff, you've got people that are customers that want to see you. You've got way more people around you that want to spend time with you, that want to be around you, but you feel lonelier than ever. And the reason why is because people see you and praise you because they have to. It's like staff are not, everyone's nice to you. Everyone's nice to you because you're the person with the success. There's something that they want, and I remember hearing this before thinking, it's such a negative kind of outlook, but it really is true. If you're the boss, like I'm not gonna treat a boss badly. I'm gonna be nice to him. It's just, why would I do that? It doesn't make any sense. I've got a vested interest in him liking me. If he likes me, my life's better. If he doesn't, my life's worse. So people treat you in a certain way, but it's less authentic. I still had some really cool, amazing, authentic relationships, but the general rule of thumb is that people are already preset to treat you in a certain way. And the other thing is that people don't understand the pressure. So you have all these staff You're a human, they're a human, you spend time together. They don't understand what you go through. It's a different world. They go home at the end of the day. Most people think when you're running a business, you have a bunch of people that work for you. You know, you have employees that work for you. It's the opposite way around. When you're running a business, you're working for everybody else. Because if you stop, no one else gets paid. When there's holidays and you're working and everyone's off, you're working for them to make sure they keep their job. You're paying their safety, their superannuation, their like retirement funds. You are literally working for everyone else there. You're getting there earlier, you're leaving later. You are working for everybody else and no one else gets that. It's a completely different psychology. And so you're around heaps of people, but you feel lonely even though you have that because you can't relate. And that's why it's important to join entrepreneurial associations and be able to empathize and discuss some of these problems with other people. And I would catch up monthly with a bunch of people that ran 10 to $150 million businesses, and we'd discuss the problems, and everyone's like, yes, I also tried to give the person the raise and then they quit. And it's like, and it felt like crap. And I just got sued by someone. It's like, everyone's going through the same stuff, and it's challenging, but can feel very lonely. Unexpected, right? So you're going to be more popular. Everyone wants to spend time with you, but it's not the same. They don't get it. You gotta just trust me. I know these are weird things, but it's true. The compass, your compass, the thing that is determining the direction you go in of the business is the profit and loss report by default. People don't usually know what a profit and loss is. It's essentially a report that is the most important report in your business from a financial literacy perspective. This is how it works. You get a series of income, and you have like income, expenses, and then the income minus the expenses equals the profit. And if your expenses, so you got the income, let's say it's $100,000, or let's say it's $1 million, and your expenses are $800,000, 200,000 profit. If you get $1 million and then your expenses are 1.5 million, then you got 500,000 loss, negative 500,000. That's why it's called a profit and loss. In business, sometimes you have a profit, sometimes you have a loss. That's why it's called a profit and loss. And it is the guiding light. If you've got good reporting, you look in Xero or whatever accounting software Maya use, and you've got a live update as all the transactions that are being processed through your business bank account come into that accounting platform. It's automatically giving you a live and a monthly based on which transactions you've categorized into income, expenses, and which type of income, which type of expenses. It gives you an update. And that is what, if you've got a board of directors, when you catch up monthly and you speak to your board, they look at the profit and loss. How do we go? Did we meet our profit targets for the month or not? Where was our income compared to the projections? Where were the expenses compared to the projections? And this is why big companies are always cost cutting, because they look at the profit and loss. Let's increase the income, decrease the expenses. What can we cut? How can we make more money? What can we cut from the expenses? How can we make more income? And that is automatically in a company by any accountant. You go to an accountant or a business advisor, by default, they make decisions based off the profit and loss. It's just the guiding light. How do we make it have more profit? And because you're the Titanic and your cost base is high, it is actually, you have to profit, or else you could just completely just destroy the whole business. Everyone loses their jobs. There's a lot of pressure around that. So by default, that is the guiding light. The problem with that is that most people get into business for freedom. Most people get into business because they enjoy certain components of it. But it is very difficult. I was great at this. Most entrepreneurs aren't. It took me a while to get good at it. But most entrepreneurs that I know, business owners that run big, successful $30, $50 million businesses, don't do what they enjoy in the business. They do what they think they have to do to get the profit and loss looking good. Literally. I have friends that love product development and they hate sales, and they literally spend all their time selling. Even though they're rich, even though they've got massive businesses, because they're trying to get this profit and loss good, they don't even give themselves permission to do the things that they want to do. So people prioritize profit over passion, and they drop their sense of alignment. I don't do this, but I did at a certain stage, and it actually caused problems for me. I burnt out. And this is what happens by default, because all your advisors, mentors are all geared towards helping you with this profit and loss. But that's one form, that's like one factor of your life, profit, money. It's not the important thing. And people lose the point and the reason why they even got into it in the first place. I'd say 8 out of 10 entrepreneurs mess this up. Literally, successful multi-million dollar entrepreneurs. Probably 9 out of 10. 1 out of 10 has the business growth in a way that aligns with what they actually want to do. 9 out of 10 make decisions based on the profit and loss against what they actually is going to make them the most fulfilled. 9 out of 10. That's just inconceivable. And I'm telling you, it's a fact. I'm telling you from all the people, hundreds of entrepreneurs that I know, multi-million dollar entrepreneurs, that is a thing. Doesn't make, you might be like, why the hell would I do that? You will do it. And then you'll course correct and you'll remember back to this. It happens. 10, you encounter devilish behavior. The S in devilish, money sign. People go crazy over money. People get entitled. You just come across psychopaths, I'm telling you. Legal, like I've had people that have just rorted me. I've had people that have stolen just so much money from me, effed me around, just done jobs, contracted jobs on office fit outs, taken the money and just ditched. I never thought this sort of stuff would happen. And if it did happen, I thought, oh, it was such an outlier thing, it would never happen to me. You meet some absolute psychos. You have people that, like I have some people from a client perspective that you'd bring on board into a coaching arrangement. They'd be like, thank you so much for changing my life. This is amazing. And then the next day, write an angry email threatening to take you to like a media outlet and expose the scam that is your business if you don't refund them immediately. Because people get crazy around money. It's a weird thing. I've never been like this personally with anybody else and gotten aggressive. Just people go crazy around money. It is insane. And the reason why is because people will, this is a personal development quote that has proven to be true. People go against their values and against their integrity to meet their needs. And if someone feels unsafe, and a lot of people have security things around money where they're in a tight situation and they're hoping for a big win and then it doesn't work out and then they're stressed and then they steal money from a relative and all these things, they compromise their values to meet their needs. And when you're running a business, you've got relationships to hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of other people, customers, stakeholders, suppliers that have a financial investment and a financial relationship with you. And you see some crazy stuff you would never expect. It is insane. Seriously, this is one thing. What it's really like, you encounter some absolute, people just lie. They blatantly lie. It is insane. And it just happens to everyone. Every single multi-million dollar business. Because when you get to that point, you've got enough people that just statistically, you come across enough crazy people, it happens. It is insane. And I would never expect to have someone steal money from me. I just can't believe it, but it happens. So just be prepared. 11, maturity is what you get when the more that you do this stuff, the more mature you become. Creates a healthy relationship with entitlement. You see, what happens when you're in business is you win and you lose. You go through wartime and peacetime. To have a multi-million dollar business, you really have to do some intense stuff. You got to work hard. You got to sacrifice a lot. You got to invest a lot. And you always get back what you deserve. You invest, you take big risks, and you take enough of them and you honor like what feels right. You get rewarded, you cut corners, it just gives you honest feedback. It's like a very level playing field. You're in a game where the scoreboard comes based on how well you're doing. It's just instant feedback. If you lose and you lost for the year, it's because you stuffed up and you played poorly. You get that feedback. And what that does is it creates a relationship where you've got a sense of maturity and groundedness, and it weeds out the entitlement. You see, most people that I've come across that haven't had experience in something hard like this have entitlement. And what entitlement means is they expect to receive more than what they're willing to give. That looks like victim mode. Why? Why do I have this? It's bullcrap because the person at work's talking to me like this. Why don't I get this? Like, I deserve a raise. And what people don't realize is whatever you have is what you deserve. If you've got a problem, you caused it. If someone's treating you in a certain way, you've enabled it. Everything comes back down to what you've done. And when you're in business, you constantly have that reflected to you because you're constantly being slapped in the face when you make a mistake and you're like, okay, now I get it. And that maturity that comes from you do well, you get rewarded, you do poorly, you get big slaps. And sometimes they're innocent mistakes and you'll just get open palm slapped because it's just such an accurate feedback loop from what you do and what you get. And that's why it's a beautiful thing for anyone that's really willing to have a crack. But you create a level, and the more maturity you have, the easier it is to see where other people's immaturity is. Because you have people left, right, and center that are entitled, wanting a lot, but not willing to do it. What? This is bullcrap. Why am I on this salary? And it's like, well, I would pay you more if you were invaluable and I couldn't lose you. It's just obvious. You'd have a higher salary if you did a better job. It's just obvious, you know. And that's what you see. And same thing with me. If I didn't do well for the year, it's because I didn't work well. I didn't work hard. I knew that I should have gone this route, but I chose this slightly easier one. Or I was scared to invest that $300,000 in restructuring and improving those systems. And instead I just was like, no, I'll just take some money out of the business and do this. Boom, slapped. Because you made the call that you knew you didn't make the call you knew you needed to make. And so you learn about entitlement, you become mature and grounded. And that is such a gift, because then you're so much more expecting in life. You're not as easily thrown. And they are the 11. So I'm going to summarize. If you found this valuable, drop a like on the video, and I'm going to summarize this, and then I'm going to give you a little action step. First thing, money's not a problem personally. You just buy what you want. You want a nice car, live in a nice place, easy. It's not completely dissimilar. You don't just teleport to some dreamland. You still have problems. You still have good days, bad days. You still might feel low, lonely, depressed. You still get treated poorly, well, by different people. The level of luxe changes, but you do the same things. You can still do everything you want to do now without all the extra money. You can just do it in cooler ways. You get to meet the person and go behind the stage, you know. You're not as nimble. You've got to consider the fact that your big cost base makes you slower. There's more responsibility, which is the next point. Clients and staff are relying on you. You have less time because you've got competing attention with staff, clients, you got home life, friends, family, community. You're a lot busier, actually. People identify you based on your success. So you start to attribute, people like me because I got the money, and that's a trap. You got to just ignore it and then have your sense of self based on the way that you are, who you are. Love yourself unconditionally. You're lonely. It's lonely. You got to form genuine relationships outside of the business because not all of the relationships inside are going to be unconditional. A lot of them are going to be conditional, not because anyone's bad. It just makes sense for people to have to treat you well. Okay. You got to be careful of allowing the normal scoreboard for every company is a profit and loss. It's like every company, every accountant looks at a profit and loss, and it can lead you astray from what's most aligned for you, or why you got into business in the first place. You see psychos, essentially, because money makes people crazy because they feel unsafe and then they act against their values. And you become more grounded and less entitled as a human because you really go through your paces and you get an accurate reflection and understanding of the relationship between giving and receiving in life, which is really cool. So my question to you is, which out of all of these was the most surprising? Which out of all these factors did you just not even think about? Drop it in the comments. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you click that subscribe so you can check out the rest of my videos, and when I bring new ones out, you'll be notified. And if you haven't liked the video yet, click that like button, and I'll see you guys in the next video.